This is our first month where we have an in-person teacher in Sachin Ling. First, since we started the year-long series of Women of Wisdom, celebrating the living legacy of Buddhist women. So what we want to do, Venerable, is to offer you a mandala.
Good. So that's so we all know what we're doing. We're thinking of imagining all the marvelous things of the world, make people happy. As mandala just refers to one's abode, you know. And so our abode is this planet. So we think of all the marvelous things. And then we imagine piling them all up and offering them to the Buddha as a request for the teachings. Skip this next line. One more prayer. Go. Dhamma kyenam ki chaku kala kien se chu tin chik jita sampe du se zin mala zabye chu ki kala atu. So let me imagine Buddha happily accepting our offering. Hiram Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Nirachayami. Okie doke.
Here comes Stay Steady.
Refuge and bodhicitta.
So now we'll all sing this little prayer. We do this little prayer. It's expressing two things. The first lines are for those of us who figure we're already Buddhists. So it's reiterating our reliance on the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. And the second two lines are stating, I always like to say it this way, that the Lamas say state our motivation. Well, I don't think we say that. We'd say stating our purpose. That makes more sense. Well, what's your purpose? Why are you here? What's your goal? Why are you doing? Why are we doing this? So we're thinking here a very grand idea of the biggest you could possibly imagine. We're saying, you know, by listening to these teachings, that our goal is to become a Buddha in order to better a sentient being. I mean, you can't get a bigger goal than that. It's the long term, okay? And always the long term is better one. As this holiness says, always aspire to do what's most beneficial. Long term better than short term. So think like that as we sing this prayer. Sangye charam sokhe tomnamla jancho baru jagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gibe sonanki rola meche sangye dropashok sangye charam sokhe tomnamla jancho baru jagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gibe sonanki rola meche sangye dropashok Sangye charan sokhe tomnamla jancho baru jagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gibe sonanki drola peche sangye drupasyo. Okay, good. So what are we talking? Where is it? Get the prayer up. There we go. Staying steady. I mean, this is really what we all desperately need, because we can all see we go up and down like yo-yos. Because you know, it's what we mean by anxiety, by panic attacks, by worry, by fears. You know, we're completely unsteady. It's a really good way of putting it, you know. So why is that? We should analyze why. We just say, oh, well, it's natural. If bad things happen, of course you freak out. We say like that. You know, we don't question. And Buddha's basically saying that he's found methods, you know, to help us keep our minds stable. That's bare minimum, absolute bare minimum. Because he's saying the outside world isn't what upsets us. The outside world isn't what makes us unsteady. It's our own mind that makes us unsteady. And this is very shocking, because we don't think that at all. I mean, we just do not believe that. It's very clear. You know, you think if everything is quiet, you feel calm. So then when something is noisy, we freak out. We assume that the change is the noise. So therefore, that's the problem. So the way to put it really, and this is the best way, the most technically correct way to put it, you know, is that the outside world, for sure, of course it plays a role. So the right way to put it is that the outside world, we think, is the main cause of why we go bonkers. We don't say that here, do we?
Yes, we do.
We do.
Yes.
Bonkers.
Yes.
That's very English. Come on.
Well.
We must have picked it
that's
up
our
from the
roots.
Poms. So it's like the commonest thing to see, the obvious one that everybody on the planet is the same. The dogs, the monkeys, the humans. So of course we assume it's right, therefore, because everyone does it. There's the things that go on out there that are the source of why we're happy and are the source of why we're not happy. It's the simplest way to put it. We all believe that, and we can be forgiven for thinking that, because it does. That's how we are now. That's how we respond. And Buddha says, no. What goes on in your mind is the main cause. This is very, very shocking. But this is the essence of all of Buddha's philosophical views, all the view of karma, all the view of the mind, and all therefore the view that's the basis of his methodology and of his system his system, which is to basically change the mind. He's not complaining if you want to change the world. Change it, please, he says. If you can, no problem. But all he's saying is, that if you want to make things permanently different, a fundamental change needs to be the mind. These words are not complicated. I promise you, they're really not esoteric. But it's why. So we have to ask why. If it's so simple, the concept, why is it so difficult? Well, I mean, why is anything difficult? Because you're not used to doing it. That's all. Whatever's easy is because we're used to doing it. It's very simple. It's almost embarrassingly easy to say that. Whatever is a habit is easy. So, we have absolutely not got the habit, isn't it? We do not have the habit of seeing our mind, and that's the problem. We don't have that habit at all. But initially it's outrageous. It's shocking to even hear it, So that's why it's difficult, because we have a totally opposite view. And he would say, of course, we've had it for not just this life, but for countless lifetimes. We come into this life completely programmed. And even if we don't like the idea of reincarnation, at least it's something that we can listen to and think about. Well, no wonder the habit is so strong. I mean, we don't start this world in our mother's womb as a blank slate, which is the common view we have, not at all. We come programmed with our own tendencies, This is the Buddha's point. Which increases his view, which increases the power of his view that what goes on in the mind is the main thing. Because if we think that, we are made by our mummy and daddy, and they definitely give us a body, there's no argument there, but for the Buddha, they don't give us a mind. And that too is pretty shocking. But whereas we assume mother and father are the cause of me, so, therefore, and therefore all our lives we think the outside is the cause. So of course we assume that the outside should change, especially when it's a really awful thing that happens, and you're shocked, absolutely unsteady, and freak out and have a panic attack or get anxious or angry. It never occurs to us. It doesn't occur to us naturally that we can change our mind. But this is essentially what Buddha is saying. I mean, it's so simple as a concept. The only reason it is difficult is because we're not used to it. That's it. So the first thing we have to do is give it some credibility and even try it out. But my feeling is before even we try it out, I think we can prove it. We can really prove it. The simplest example is if you really believe that delicious chocolate cake is the cause of your happiness, then after 5 pieces, now please have a look how it looks. In the beginning, before you started putting it into your face, it looked utterly divine, the most delicious thing you've ever seen, and completely convinced if you get it, you'll get happy. Well, after 5 pieces, how do you feel? Utterly disgusting. But crucially, how does the cake appear to you? Disgusting. It's proof. What's different is, is the cake. The cake hasn't changed. The cake still is the same warm-looking, delicious chocolate. Hasn't gone moldy or anything. A few pieces are missing, that's all. The cake hasn't changed. This should, if we have really a good mind, that's enough to realize emptiness, I promise. But of course, we don't get it. We forget all about that experience. We forget all about that. We forget that the cake that made you vomit, we forget that part. We only think of it as a cake that could make us happy again. So we anxiously, hopefully do it again next day, hoping this time it'll work, We forget all about the fact that it made us vomit. We're very funny, actually. You should think we should be embarrassed. We should be embarrassed. That's really unintelligent, isn't it? You stab yourself and you think, oh, it's not, I'll do it again tomorrow, it'll be okay, and do it again. Stab yourself again. You keep forgetting the knife does the problem. We're very strange, But all that points out from the Buddhist perspective is the depth of the habit of this mental illness called attachment. That's it, effectively the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths, effectively, Buddha's saying the main source of suffering in this life is attachment. And of course, if this is true, I mean, if this is true, we have to know what he means. And we mostly don't, even we're Buddhists, we don't know what he means. We might sort of know, oh, I'm so attached to chocolate cake. We think that's about it, You think, well, how can that be the cause of suffering, for God's sake? But it's multifaceted. But then why the unsteady? What's that got to do with, what's that got to do with attachment? Well, that's aversion. And that's the response when attachment is thwarted, when attachment runs out, when attachment doesn't get what it wants. Aversion is the only way for attachment to go. Think of it like that. So attachment is this dissatisfaction, this emotional hunger, this expectation, this neediness, which then the stronger that is coming from here, the more fantasy it causes the cake to appear as. It's our mind that makes up the delicious cake. As Rinpoche says, the delusions, all of them, and here we're talking attachment, they'll have a very specific function of exaggerating. So as Rinpoche says, it's so delicious. He says attachment, in this case attachment, what it does when it's in the mind, it decorates on top of the cake, let's say, layers upon layers of characteristics that simply aren't in the cake. That's the best way to put it. This is a technical function. Technically, in Buddhist psychology, that's the function of all the delusions. Anger exaggerates the ugliness of something. Attachment exaggerates the deliciousness of something. Pride exaggerates the importance of yourself. Low self-esteem exaggerates the unimportance of yourself. All the delusions do that. And is why they suffer is because they're not accurate. That's the thing we were discussing on yesterday, the day before, whatever day it was. They exaggerate. They cause us not to be in touch with reality. These are all the words that are so powerful. And these delusions are there all the time. We've also got the nice qualities, luckily. I mean, they're our saving grace. Like I always say, this is not the way we think in the West. This is not modern psychology at all. We don't think this way. But if you take this model, you can really see it in the mind, You've got the delusions, the neuroses, the exaggerators, the decorators, the distorted, miserable, depressing, distressed, afflicted, delusional states of mind. Attachment and anger, they're the two main ones. We go between them 1,000 times a day, then the others kind of, offshoots of those. I mean, young Ling Rinpoche, he often says, we hear that Lord Buddha talks about 84,000 problems, 84,000 neuroses. 21, Ling Rinpoche says 21,000 are rooted in these three poisons, the summary of all those 84,000. All those 84,000 subsumed to these three. It's a very interesting model of the mind. The root one, ignorance, particularly the root neurosis, the root one of this ego grasping, this primordial mistake, affliction, decorator that believes in an intrinsic me, which gives rise to attachment to get what that fantasy me wants, which gives rise to aversion, which is the panic attack when attachment doesn't get what it wants. These are the three. He says 21,000 are rooted in ignorance, have the character of ignorance. 21,000 have the character of attachment. 21,000 have the character of aversion. And the fourth 21,000 have the character of all three. And this is a really delicious model of the mind, as far as Buddha is concerned, that covers every single possible deluded state of mind. And there are 84,000 antidotes. So being unsteady in the face of what? We're not unsteady when it comes to delicious things. We're content because we feel calm. Phew, everything's okay, Phew, everything's okay. The cake is what I expected. The coffee's the right temperature. The heat is the right number on the dial. The car's doing the right thing. The person's being nice to me. Whenever everything is going nicely, relatively speaking, that means attachment is getting what it wants. There's this little junkie in there that wants only the nice things. This is the simplest way to put what attachment is. It only wants the nice things. And this is every millisecond. It's not as if it goes to sleep sometimes, attachment. It doesn't. Sometimes it's more in the background, sometimes it's more overt. It's always there, underneath everything. It's so primordial. Until you realize emptiness is going to be there, I promise. You have to sort of question of degree, you know. But it's the one that's driving, and it poisons all the good stuff as well. When there's love there, attachment pollutes it. When there's compassion, attachment pollutes it. You can't have perfect love and compassion if there's still attachment in your mind. It's not possible. It's impossible. It's like a joke. So this attachment is always wanting only the nice things. It can only cope with everything being nice. This is the perfect way to explain why it is we then get upset. Such a simple word, you know, upset. Upset, we say. I'm upset, irritated, upset, annoyed, frustrated. They're all polite words for mild anger. I'm not kidding. And we have these 1,000 times a day. So the attachment also is a way to put it. It's so primordial. It's at the level of assumption. It's at the level of constant expectation. So that's why it's always so much anxiety. So when anxiety is strong, it's the fear that the bad thing that attachment doesn't want will happen, or it's the fear that the good thing attachment does want won't happen. That's exactly what anxiety is. We all recognize it. It's the interplay of attachment and aversion. So when things are going nasty, we can afford to relax, you know. Oh, phew. But then part of the problem, then this is the other tricky bit, part of the problem, another one of these delusions in the mind is this, it's sort of like a very intellectual, it's Buddha calls it grasping at things as permanent. Grasping at things as unchanging. This plays a tremendously powerful role in our suffering, doesn't it? And it's just there alongside attachment at the level of assumption. And it seems to me that the stronger... So when attachment gets what it wants, the nice things, then what we do without realizing is, because we only want the nice thing, we can't bear the thought of not having it. And the fact of the matter is we know perfectly well from countless eons of practice, although we forget it, or even just this life, we kind of know it's going to change, but we're terrified of it changing. I mean, we are literally terrified. We can't bear the thought it will change. So even as you're eating the cake, if you look at your mind really carefully, you know, you think of something, first you think something's missing, oh, dissatisfied, oh, you know, or think, oh, cake. And you get all excited now. It shifts from dissatisfaction to excitement, isn't it? And that's anticipation. And often anticipation is the best part of attachment,
Yes.
isn't it? Because the bigger the expectation, which is all part of attachment, you expect, you go to get it, you control, you go to the shop, we go to the cupboard, you get the cake out on the plate, you sit down, there's a plate, there's a fork, it's all nice, your friends are there, and the excitement. I mean, I know it's so much like this. I mean, I'm really attached to my food, right? And when someone takes me out for a meal, I'll go out for a meal, and especially if your stomach's empty. I mean, if your stomach's not empty, it's horrible, isn't it? Oh, no, not food. But if your stomach's empty and then the mind is all eager and excited because you're bored, you're so excited, you go down, you order, and you look at the other meals when they come, they look so divine. You want, oh, I should have ordered that one. You look at all the delicious things, the lovely French fries. And you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
You're watching, you're looking, you're trying to be polite. You don't want to launch over there and jump in your mouth. You know, you understand? You're sitting there all excited, waiting for yours to come. And it comes, and you want to be polite. You want to shove it in before everybody else starts. You've got to offer it first. But you understand what I'm saying? It's just a meal. Excited, anticipating, excited. It looks delicious. It looks delicious. Vibrating deliciousness, begging me to eat it, isn't it? We know this. We know this experience. And as you're eating it, we think we're enjoying it. But what we're not noticing is all this endless process is so intricate, all the different parts of our mind. So one part of the mind is attachment, expecting, all excited. But the other part of the mind, as soon as it hits the mouth, which is where the food's supposed to go, we don't put it in here by accident, do we? We know which sense it belongs to, right? You put it in there and you taste it. The taste sensation, the feeling of pleasure does arise. Pleasure does come. But if the attachment is very strong, meaning you're greedy, you miss the pleasure. Because as you're even eating the first mouthful, attachment's already anticipating the second one. Are you communicating? So we miss. I mean, when you're really hungry, you eat. I was thinking about, eating my Vegemite toast in the morning, and I'm reading the news at the same time. I look on the plate. Oh, what happened to it? You don't remember eating it. Do you understand?
Yeah.
But as you're eating the cake, anticipating the pleasure, pleasure does come. But this is the tragedy. This is the piece that is the tragedy, which is why attachment is so tremendous suffering. Attachment has been building up, right? Isn't it? First, dissatisfaction. Then excitement, anticipate, get the cake, it goes in the mouth, and pleasure is definitely triggered, which is the point of the entire exercise. Not even to get the cake, is to get the pleasure triggered by your senses making contact with it. Are we communicating? But the tragedy about attachment is that now it goes from anticipating, and then the second feeling, pleasant feeling arises, attachment is already disappointed. It is already disappointed. This is the tragedy. It is already disappointed. It says, not enough, Rabina, stick another mouthful in. And it's downhill from there. We know this. This is scientific fact. But we can't, the pain is too much to bear, We don't want to go anywhere near it. Do you understand? It's incredible, absolutely fascinating. So then, attachment, exhausted by this point, has gradually gone from, as you have the third piece, the fourth piece, attachment is sort of become kind of really exhausted, and then become now it's turning into stress, because the attachment, the excitement and the anticipation has sort of now causing now what's happening is with the contact with the cake is now triggering no longer pleasant feelings, because it's no longer pleasing, because you've had too much of it. So now it's triggering, the contact with the cake is now triggering unpleasant feelings. But you're still hoping, if you're really hungry and really greedy and not paying attention, you're sort of hoping maybe the next mouthful might do it. So you put another one in. But before you know it, we know the unpleasant feelings are so intense, you will now want to vomit. And you look at the same piece of cake, it's not rotten yet. And now, because you've taken off your rose-colored specs, your attachment glasses, you've now got your aversion glasses on, and it now looks disgusting. That meal, so let's say you finish your meal and all the chips have gone, there's all this big mess on the plate. But you look next door and they just ordered what you had ordered before, and it looks so ugly now, doesn't it? We kind of just know this is enough to realize emptiness. It's enough to realize that the food isn't the main cause of happiness or suffering. It's the mind. But we don't join the dots because we're junkies, and the habit, that's all, just habit. We know this. So that's just a simple example of cake, and that really is what's happening is a mild form of anxiety. Can you hear that? It's a mild form of anxiety. Anxiety is a word of the interplay between attachment and aversion, So what I find fascinating, this aversion, it's a very modest kind of word, kind of aversion. Attachment is, oh, delicious, and we go towards it. Aversion is, go away. And we go between these two continuously. So strong aversion is called anger. You see a person shouting. I find this so fascinating. You see a person yelling, shouting, big or little person, shouting, arms flailing, words coming out the mouth, spit coming out the mouth, eyes wide as saucers. And you say, oh, look at that, she's angry. Well, you know what she's having is a serious, and I really mean this, not even being sarcastic. She's having a serious panic attack. Can you see that? Oh my God, how dare that happen to me? I don't deserve. That's exactly what panic is. But because it's called anger, then we see another person having a panic attack. Oh my God, I'm freaking out. I can't cope. I'm freaking out. Oh, the poor thing, they're having a panic attack. There's no difference, except the person's angry that are liable to hit you. Do you understand? Because in the mind is also wants to harm. Anger wants to harm. Panic attack is just sort of things appear too much, but it really is similar. It's just this added component to it. In other words, totally unsteady. We just can't cope. That's all. So that's because we've got attached. This is not the way we analyze it in Western psychology. It's very clear. But this is Buddha's. And I think it's just ingenious to use this explanation and analyze your own experiences. You're going to see it exactly. So what's the solution? Well, it's the hardest thing on the planet. You first got to acknowledge. Even if you don't believe the mind is the main thing, at least acknowledge your mind's playing a role. And this is the point that's so shocking. I can't believe when I first heard it. Lamazopa one time said, and I'm repeating the words exactly, verbatim. He said, the vast majority of all humans on the planet have absolutely no idea that what goes on in their mind plays any role at all in their lives. You think, come on, Rinpoche, don't be ridiculous. What he means is, I put it this way. What he means is, when it comes to happiness and suffering, we don't have any idea our mind plays a role. When it comes to being a mathematician, we know your mind plays the main role. You've got to learn mathematical theory. You know your mind is the main role. You can't blame the pencil or the computer that you can't add up 1 + 1. It's the thoughts in your mind. So we know, I find that totally fascinating in our culture when it comes to scientific or artistic or whatever you like endeavors. We absolutely know that what goes on in the mind is the main player. It's really clear. You're learning musical theory in your mind, thoughts, concepts. Musical theory is thoughts. No more, no less. Thoughts, and you train so rigorously to have exactly the correct thoughts again and again and again, and you play and play and play until you've perfected it. We know you are the main cause of the musician. We absolutely know that. But as soon as it comes to what we call ethics, as soon as it comes to happy feelings and suffering feelings, we don't think our mind plays any role at all. This is pretty intense, but I think we can prove it's true. Isn't it? It's mind-boggling when you think about it. So we're kind of demented, you know. We know our mind's important when it comes to those things, but not when it comes to happiness. It's beyond fascinating to me. That blows my mind. Because that's the habit. Blaming the outside. Why are you good at music, Rabina? Oh, that's my my teacher's fault. That's Mr. Steinway's fault. That's Mr. Bach's fault. And nothing to do with me. I'm not good at music. Nothing to do with me. No, nothing to do with me. It's the piano, it's the teacher, it's the musician, it's the music. We never say that. Of course not. We're honored to own responsibility. Not when it comes to happiness. Not when it comes to suffering. I mean, effectively, you're blaming the cake for making you happy. Effectively, that's what it is. You know. So all this is why we're unsteady. Well, I mean, we're all neurotic, completely neurotic. I would have loved that word. I don't know what the actual meaning of that word is. I always should check up on it. I love it. I'm going to just check the definition of neurotic. I'm sure Buddha would like it very much. I mean, Mr. Freud invented it, didn't he? These Greek words. Having, caused by, or related to neurosis. I mean, like, okay, then. Oh, come on, for God's sake, what's the definition of neurosis then? Neurosis is definition. Don't tell me it's a neurotic person. I'll go It says a mental condition that is not caused by organic disease involving symptoms of stress, depression, anxiety, obsessive behavior, hypochondria, but not a radical loss of touch, with reality, not a radical loss. So neurosis is mild, okay? That's a really wonderful way to put it. That's a very interesting way to put it, that he says it's not a radical loss of touch with the reality. Because you see, that's bullseye for the Buddha. That if we can get, I swear to you, if we can get that concept clear, that attachment, anger, jealousy, low self-esteem, all these neuroses, their main function, this is how we talked on the weekend, it's a technical thing. They are misconceptions. And by definition, a misconception is a thought, isn't it, that isn't accurate, meaning is not in sync with the object. Are you with me? So if you say 1 + 1 is 3, in relation to the model of math, that's a misconception. If you're colorblind and you see pink as blue, that's a misconception. You are deluded. That's why that word delusion is a great word for affliction. It points to exactly the way the afflictions function, the decorating part, exaggerating, decorating, embellishing. If we can understand that is the main function of all the neuroses, all the delusions, we will understand Buddhist psychology, and therefore we will know how to change and why we should change. Because he says we need to be in touch with reality. This is the main thing the Buddha is saying. I mean, honestly, this is the whole point in Buddhist philosophy and psychology. This is literally his point. This is literally directly his point. The extent to which we suffer is the extent to which we are not in touch with reality. I didn't know Freud said that. He's a very clever man. I'm always sarcastic about him, but now I appreciate him. That's incredible. That's exactly what fascinating. And that's the point about the virtues. The second, got the delusions and the virtues. They're two separate categories of states of mind. They are utterly different. You've got to realize this. The trouble is we can't see that because they come together like a big soup. We can't tell the difference, you know. We merge them together as one experience. That's where, for example, love and attachment. Love is a virtue. It's an altruistic state of mind. And from this perspective, it is a valid concept. Why valid? Because it's based on interdependence. And love is necessarily a state of mind that reaches out to another, and you empathize with their pain. You see their pain, you know, you feel their pain. That's empathy or compassion. They're same in Buddhist psychology. So they're valid. It's a virtuous state of mind. And it can only make you happy and can only help you help others. A delusion is a lie. It's I-based, which already is a lie. It's distorted, panic-stricken in its nature. They say fear is the nature of all the neuroses. They don't go on about it much, but I mean, how they talk about Tara being the liberator from the fears of samsara. Fear sounds so weird, but all these delusions, they are rooted in fear, panic, worry, fear, anxiety. It's their flavor. It's their flavor. Attachment is the fear of not getting what you want. Aversion is the panic when you get what you don't want. They're all distorted. That's why they are fear-based. Very fascinating to see that. But we've got but our virtues right alongside, they're our saving grace. You know, if you have a relationship with a person, but you've got some love, some patience, some kindness, some generosity, then you'll manage. But if it's mainly attachment, mainly anxiety, mainly anger, mainly depression, it will be a nightmarish relationship because you can't see, when you're in the delusions, you can't see past your own nose. Everything is seen through the lenses of your neurotic needs. That's why people are so self-centered when we're miserable. Not being horrible, it's a fact. Because they are in their nature self-centered, and they're in their nature fear-based. That's why they talk about the fears of samsara. So what it means by samsara, being locked up in the nonsense, you know. So attachment is this junkie that always wants only everything to be lovely. And of course, the definition of lovely means what I want. Not your lovely, screw that. My lovely, you know, do you understand? My lovely, you know, that's the point. They're totally self-centered. So fascinating. And that's why we're unsteady when bad things happen. You know, you don't like the politician, you don't like the people, you don't like this house, you don't like the environment, you don't like whatever it is out there. And the fact of the matter is suffering things are always happening, no matter what. Suffering is just the nature of the samsara. It's always going to be bad things happening, which is the fruit of negative karma from the past, you know. And we don't expect it. That's why we have panic when it changes. So the next one of grasping of things as permanent adds to the problem, you know. Attachment grasps getting the nice thing. But if we were flexible and it would change, then you're more relaxed when it does. But we can't, we're not. So the grasping at permanence adds to the problem. So you cling to it, frantic to make it hopefully not change, you know. And when it does change, that's when we become completely berserk, when we go completely unsteady and lose the plot, because aversion is arising. So when the good thing happens, you cling to it and desperately hope it doesn't change. Believing, in other words, it'll last. Believing it will last. Already that's setting yourself up for problems. Because again, reality, Buddha says, is that things change. That's reality. That's reality, he says. That's reality. That's how things are. have to prove it to yourself. But because you've got the nice thing and you can't bear the thought it will change, which comes from grasping at permanence, then there's so much fear and intense, it's incredible. But then when it does change to something bad, this is the tragedy. You know, when your boyfriend leaves you for a younger version, attachment is shattered, the grasping at permanence has added to the pain. And now the bad thing is there. Now you believe it won't change. Before we desperately hoped it wouldn't change when it was the good thing, believing it wouldn't. Now I've found happiness. Now I've got the best job. Now everything is perfect. We believe that. And it's just setting ourselves up for incredible suffering. And then when it does change to the bad thing, now we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Now we think that this bad thing won't change. That's why we despair. That's why we kill ourselves. So the grasping at things as unchanging is the most terrible pain that it causes. You know? And that's there all the time as well. And these habits are just there. They're simply habits. You know, that's all. And a habit is something you've done that often, it comes a second nature. And then the tragedy, of course, in our culture, what we do is, because we see everybody's like this from the time we're born, we see that. So then we have this assumption, this is the normal quality of a normal person. So we give equal status to neuroses and anger and jealousy and depression and grasping at things as permanent, along with love and kindness, compassion and intelligence. We just assume they're kind of the components of a normal person. There's no view in our culture. There is a view with psychology and neuroplasticity. We can change a little bit, which is great. But we don't go nearly as much as Buddha. He's radical. He has found from his own experience that we can rid our mind utterly of the neuroses. Now that's radical, that's extreme. That is not what we think in our culture. And instinctively, it makes sense because we just believe, this is a tragedy, when these habits are very strong, isn't it? We feel it is at the core of who we are. This is who I am. This is the worst one of all. Believing it's permanent and intrinsic, inherent, bad me. You know, this is so natural. This is the worst nightmare. Then of course we will kill ourselves. What chance have we got? You know, I mean, the suffering is unbearable. Just this. Forget about poverty and everything else. Just this, the mental suffering. Ordinary people. A solution? Well, you know, there's different approaches. There's a multitude of tools you can use. It's not just one. It's obvious. If the external object in your life plays such a powerful role that it makes you mad, such as alcohol, such as an abusive partner, do you see my point? Be reasonable. If it is so terrible, then the first thing to do is get the hell out of the way. But the terrible irony, the tragedy of ego is when you're in that situation and you're so overwhelmed by that object and so identified with that object, you're in this little bubble, you know, you can't see past your own nose and you can't even see that you're capable of leaving it. Do you understand me? Look at the world. I mean, it seems like the worst question you can ask a woman who's in an abusive relationship, why didn't you leave? It's the cruelest question you can ask. Do you understand me? It's actually a good question, but we can't bear to look at it. Too painful. Well, it's fascinating. I know this on Netflix. There's this very interesting documentary series, Australian one. Just these, you know, and it's called "A Question You Shouldn't Ask."
Yes.
Have you seen it?
It's great.
Isn't it amazing?
Yes.
It's a series of, like, for example, a group of African Australians, like from Sudan or somewhere, with a lot of, you know, immigrants. And so all these questions people ask but never dare to ask, you know, like rude questions, or like homosexuals, or people who are kind of short or dwarfs or weird, you know, not normal, in other words, there's what we call not normal, and questions you'd never ask. So this is really beautifully done documentary. There's no person asking questions. A group of people sit in front of the camera, one or two, and then they're just given cards and they read the question. And it's very beautifully edited. It's very, I mean,
It's a
It isn't it?
series, actually.
I know it is.
Yeah, but it just keeps going on and on. It's wonderful.
But it's very amazing. So this one group was women. Can I talk now, Lynn?
Yes, you can.
Thank you very much. This one, this one group was women, mostly women, a couple of men, and there was never more than one person in front of the camera, and they switched to different people, you know. It was very well, beautifully edited. It was amazing. So there's one group who people who lived in abusive relationships. Of course, nearly all were women, but 2 were men. And I think both the men were gay. But basically, you start off falling in love, and then the partner becomes abusive. I mean, physically, and sometimes so brutally. One woman, she was in a wheelchair, lost all her brain. She could hardly talk. She was a very funny person. She was completely paralyzed because she'd been so brutalized, beaten, kicked in the head, smashed, things thrown at her. I mean, you couldn't believe it was like a comedy the way she talked about it. In the end, it was very funny. After they'd done their talking, it was so hilarious. They were all asked, everyone said, I didn't hate him. No, I didn't matter. I didn't hate. And the last one, she was smiling. I hate him like poison, and I hope he suffers in hell forever. He said, laughing, you know. It was very funny. I mean, it was very funny. That reminds me of His Holiness. One time, he's so funny. One person went on about his sister and the questions, you know. His sister's mean or something. What do I do? And His Holiness said, tell her to go to hell. That one, hilarious. He's very funny, you know. Anyway, the point is these women, most of them, let's just say the women, it's the classic one. They go back like a moth to a flame. Do you understand? And get more abuse and more abuse. And then when you leave him, he cries and begs you to don't leave me. I love you. I promise I'll change. So the thing is, this is why I think, this as an incidental thought point, I think there's no way on the planet, I think, that we can begin to understand why that, unless you understand karma. Because you come into this life, got this powerful connection from intense history with that person. And we don't factor that in our culture at all. Because on the face of it, it is plainly foolish. If you keep getting hit, why would, I mean, yes, you would leave, you'd think. It is reasonable. So if you don't factor in karma, you can't explain it. You just can't explain it, you know. It's totally fascinating. Because some people won't stay. Some people will leave, you know. So it's the karmic intensity of it that makes it like incredible. I remember this one time in New York Times, it used to have, now it's on digital, but I know when I used to buy the actual paper at the end, on January the 31st, December the 31st, they'd have a new, of their magazine, they'd have an annual issue, and they'd have a series of biographies of all famous people who've died that year. And one of them was not famous, but it was a couple in Brooklyn who almost from the first time of living together started to abuse each other, chucking pans and kettles and punching each other. But they were together for years and years, abuse every single day, equal. And then he left one time. He moved into a studio and he came back. And she said, come back again. And she was asked in the interview, why did you let him back in? Well, you know, sort of, why not? And then they divided the room with a sheet. And they each had their half, but they'd continue shouting and screaming and throwing pots and pans through the sheet. I mean, it was treated like a comedy, really. And then one day he went to the bathroom, and then he wanted to even come out, and she saw he dropped dead. Finally, I mean, heart attack probably for all the abuse, but 2 of them were equal. They were equal. It was beyond hilarious to read it. But karma is the only way you can explain, you know. Anyway, I'm just talking here. What am I saying? Why was I bringing that up? That's an aversion, really, you know. It's kind of hilarious. That so when you are so, this is the thing, when you are so brutalized, like, you know, reading is recently, right? This woman, I forget what state it's in. This man, that's right, this is like 32. He lived in the top room of this house. He was the son. The father had died recently, and she was the stepmother. She was the stepmother. There were 2 other children. And he'd been, he's 32, and he's been living in that room, filthy, stinking, putrid, with just a sort of small bolt on the door. Would even sometimes come to put the trash out. But he lived there in prison for 32 years, never occurring to him just to climb through the window or... You can't explain that without karma, you know. He was totally, and he was like 40 pounds weight, actually covered in shit. He would have to shit into his own things, have to put the pee out the window. Like, you can't even imagine it. You can't even imagine. But so the only way to explain that is, that's for me, this is the whole point here, is karma, that one. That you can't explain any other way. The intensity, when you literally, as the door is there, no one's holding you back, So forget the extreme examples. This is even the one of ordinary, all of us, all of us. You're in a job. You can't stand the job. The boss is horrible. They might be horrible. The pay is bad. The colleagues are awful. It might be. And we complain about it. Angry, upset. And your friend says, why don't you leave, Rabina? What do you mean I should leave? He should change. What do you mean I should? He should leave, You understand? That's how we are. That's the one of aversion. Anger. How dare, what do you mean I should change? When we see the depth of these delusions, we really can understand human beings, Then you say, then the other, there's only two options ever, actually, if we can be courageous enough. There's two options. If you can, as Shanti Devi says, if you can change the outside, please change it. Then he says, if you can't, why worry? That's too brutal for us. We can't bear that. But I say, well, if you can't, but what if you can't? Then what? So there are only really ever two options. Change the thing or change your mind. That's it. Nothing else. That's it. Two options. That's it. And that's the brutal answer. But of course, we're just not equipped. We're not capable. We're too much inner work we have to do to get anywhere near that. For that man up on that top floor, I don't think he'll ever get to that point in this life. He must be so brutal, so brutalized and so tortured. His mind so weak. Do you understand me? So weak that you have to say that his mind is weak. Not criticizing. But in the West, we blame the mother for that, But it's his weak mind and strong karma from the past. So there's an awful lot of work to do to even get to the point of knowing we have a choice. And that's the real tragedy of ego, That's the victim mentality. And that's really a way Lama Yeshe used to say, ego is self-pity me. You joke about the hippies. But it's brutally true, When we are caught up in attachment and aversion and anxiety and despair, which means totally blaming the outside, it means you have zero power. That's exactly the problem. We have zero. It doesn't even occur to us, like I said, that our mind plays a role. That's the tragedy. That is the tragedy. And that's the extent of our suffering, So to say, oh, we can learn to change our mind is the most advanced advice, I promise you. So difficult because we're addicted to the other view. This is why it's so important just to know the theories. If you don't know if you don't know Buddha's theories, if you don't know what his instructions mean, how can you start to practice? If you don't know what he's meaning by change your mind or why, then how can you start to practice? It's not possible. If you can't say the theories, how can you know what to practice? Because you really have to know the words, You have to know the words because that's what you're practicing thinking. I mean, when you learn musical theory, you don't just stumble along on the piano, crossing your fingers. You have the notes written on the piece of paper. They're there, and you play those notes. And you play again and again and again. So, and then you have so this is the one about we were talking yesterday, Lynn, talking about this yesterday. She said, oh, I don't have the words, I have the feeling. That's good. That means you have empathy when someone's suffering. But if she wanted to give advice to somebody, if she talks that way, I'm sure she does know the words. But if she wanted to give advice to somebody, and you don't know what advice is words. So that's why you might know how to play the piano automatically. Like I'm always watching these children, like 6-year-olds playing Bach on YouTube. I think I always convinced that somebody's kind of photoshopped YouTube, These 6-year-olds playing Bach. Even I played one time, there's this particular Russian boy I used to watch, not anymore now. There's a friend of mine in Guatemala who's a composer, and I rang him and I played him, this little boy. He heard a fully developed adult musician.
Wow.
Do you understand? So we all know that's karma, right? Has to be. There's no other reason. But that little boy, what good is it? He can play piano. He can't teach anybody else because he has to learn the theory now. This is a really important point. If you want to help others, so if Lynn only goes by feeling, how can she help others? Oh, get the feeling. What do you mean, Lynn? What am I supposed to do? Get the feeling. No, it's not helpful. Do you understand? And that's commonly what happens with meditation. Oh no, it's beyond words. You can't explain it. Don't be so rude, you know. That's so rude. If you know how to make a cake done on the theory is because you're good at cakes, like the boy with the music. Oh, I just know how to make a cake. I can't tell you how. How mean of you. You need the words. You've got to show the recipe to other people, you know. Do you understand me?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm raving on here. So any questions, people? I mean, it's not easy being steady in the face of dramas. So, I mean, any questions that I can say some more? Come on, any questions, people?
Sometimes it's difficult when you know about the chocolate cake, but you're at, say, like a wedding where everyone has chocolate cake and everyone around you thinks that the cake is what's so delicious. And
Why is that a problem for you, though?
well, because then it's very easy to think it is the cake that's so delicious.
Oh, you mean you're seduced by everybody else's views?
Right.
Now, of course, you've got to have a strong mind and know where you're coming from. Of course you do, darling. Of course you do. We easily be influenced by external views. Of course, darling. That makes sense. Got to have a strong mind. Got to have a strong mind. It's like everybody believes that 1 + 1 is 3. When you start believing them, well, that means you're not so steady in your 1 + 1 is 2. You've got to get more steady about the truth then. That's your daily practice, isn't it? Understand? You see, I think the biggest one to see is how this attachment is this emotional hunger for something to be nice. And when it doesn't get it, that's what anxiety is. That millisecond is aversion arising. So if it's violent, then a person screams and shouts. If it's mild, we call it annoyed, irritated, frustrated, upset. But the point is it builds up. It builds up. It builds up. If you're a person who's never screamed and shouted, that all your life you've been responding in this particular way and you've never noticed it, but you've got this. But there's a friend of mine now who's got a very low key kind of approach to life. Doesn't raise her voice. You understand? She's very low key and kind of cracks jokes. Seems very easygoing, and she is. But now she's having extreme panic attacks. It's all kind of almost like calling the 911. She thinks she's going to die because everything is built up. It's built up and built up, and now everything's exploding. That's why, what's what we mean by post-stress, blah, PTSD. Undealt with junk all your life that you've buried away, you know. And the key is undealt with stuff. If you deal with it at the time, there's nothing to carry forward. Do you understand my point? That's why I always used to say a good example of when I got held up in New York with a man with a gun. This just happened to how it was. I'm trying to be clever. In the middle of the night, it was a comedy, really, because my sister and I was in 1974. We'd just come from London, where we'd been kind of these radical lefty kind of activists, and my sister Jan was into stealing. And when you're an old radical lefty activist, you can't actually think you're going to be stealing from the rich to give to the poor. Even we used to go down Oxford Street at Christmas time and go to Selfridges and all the shops and steal Christmas presents and send them home to our family. You know, we never extreme, only a few $100s worth. It's very hilarious, I know that. But Jan kept stealing. Anyway, we were walking home on the Lower East Side in 1974, and we didn't know the Lower East Side was completely filled with violence and drugs and fear. I mean, there's so much fear in New York City at that time. I remember. Whatever. Anyway, we were walking home, and Jan had her glass of wine still. She took her glass of wine to a bar. We'd been to this Irish bar, you know, and Jan had her glass of wine still. So we were walking home, and suddenly this dude comes out of nowhere and has a gun and puts it between my breasts. My very nice breasts, then I was young. Puts it between my breasts. And he says, give me your money, you know, like that, something. That's the main thing I remember, give me your money. So I remember is this kind of ridiculous comedy. Because when people dare to tell me what to do, excuse me, you know, I beg your pardon. I'm sorry. You know. So I'm starting to boss the boy around. It was all very instinctive, and I knew very clearly he was more scared than me. He was young. Probably knew at it with a gun, you know. And I looked at him in the eye, and I just remember swearing at him. And I gave him a lecture. How dare you? I said, who do you think you are? I won't say all the swear words. But I said, it was like shocking to me. I used logic, you know, shocking. That how dare, I said, the key point to me, I said, look, we're as poor as you. You give us your money. How about that? Give us your money, you know. It was hilarious, this poor guy. And also he's hearing these English-sounding accents. And as soon as Americans hear English-sounding accents, they kind of see the Queen. They see the Queen of England, you know. They're kind of so confused. So he kept this dude, this couldn't get over. And every now and again, Janet would say, hey, brother, have some wine. He'd say, I don't want you. why? Give me your money. And then then she'd say to me, give him the money. And I'd say to him, no, you give me your money. It was like ridiculous, you know. In the end, he couldn't cope. It was too much for him. And I had this very nice kind of scarlet jacket on. It was a lovely Indian jacket, very, very beautiful. I remember it. And he kind of just sort of ran his finger very gently, very unaggressively down between my breasts, then wandered off into the night. It's all I'm telling you is, whatever reason that happened, it was my party story. Well, I didn't have stress. He probably had more stress than me. I'm serious. Do you understand me? It was not PTSD. It was my party story. I had zero left of it. There was nothing left. It was fun. That's so powerful example to me, even before I was a Buddhist. When there's no fear, there's no suffering. Do you understand? It blew my mind. Honestly, blew my mind. Even then, it blew my mind. I realized it. There's no fear, there's no suffering. So we live in fear, people. Anxiety is fear. So you build it up from the time you're a baby. Attachment's being thwarted, you know. And so if you're a patient type person who doesn't express it, then of course it's going to be building up tremendously powerfully, you know. In my family, all three of my sisters had complete mental collapse at some point in the 60s. My poor mother was so busy trying to handle these crazy daughters. Because they weren't the shouters. I was the shouter. I never had a mental breakdown. I probably gave other people a mental breakdown. You understand me? I'm serious now. I'm serious. But I didn't have a mental breakdown because I would shout and yell, and somehow that's not so good. But I didn't hold it all in, and then I was able to deal with it. You know. Now being a Buddhist, I'm doing my best to, you know, become a nicer person. Are we communicating here?
We have a question in the Zoom.
Yes, good.
Okay.
What is it?
One sec.
Who is it?
It's
Jenya.
Jenya.
Talk to me, Jenya. Talk to me.
Hello. You said that we need the recipe,
What?
and I just did. You can't just say, you know, like, go be enlightened. You need the recipe,
That's right. And I'm giving it.
and
Every word I'm
and you're
saying.
giving it to us.
So everybody-
Okay, it's all the recipe.
Identifying all. No, I know. I'm saying. I know. So okay. I'm identifying. I'm trying to identify the cause of why we have panic attacks, the cause of why we get angry and upset and distressed, the cause of why we suppress. I'm just giving the terms for it. So of course, the recipe, you've got to begin with some kind of daily practice and knowing that your job eventually is to start to see your mind ever more clearly, day after day after day, identify these things that are going on day after day after day, and slowly change them. That's the method. That's the methodology.
And it's identifying the aversion,
Yeah, and the attachment.
greed.
And this, I mean, first theoretical. It's like anything is like that. If you want to go play tennis like Roger Federer, he won't just say, go out and hit the ball and cross your fingers. You'll train and train and train. He'll tell you what to do, how to do it, and you get better at it and better. It's really is exactly the same here, but we don't have patience because we can't bear the pain. So we just wish it'll all go away. And then we hear, oh, wow, you meditated, it'll all go away or something. But it's just this gradual process. I mean, it sounds easy to say it that way, but it takes time. It takes time. But the first step is to have the courage to know that our mind is flexible. Lama Zopa says we can mold our mind into any shape we like, but we're talking really a long-term job. That's so important to remember. And I think some courage can come. Like if you know there is method and there are people who've accomplished it, that gives us courage to start, you know, and find people who are good teachers, and you've got to find your own style. I mean, there's a multitude of, even in Buddhism, there's a multitude of variations of approaches, you know, find the method that works for us and learn about it and think about it and study it and just practice a little bit every day with this confidence. And that confidence already makes things different, you know. Do you understand, sweetheart?
And I can identify aversion and greed. And how do I identify delusion?
Well, the word delusion, okay. In Buddhist psychology, you've got, I mean, forget, there's a 3 categories of states of mind. Forget the third one for the moment. Mainly the 2 that I'm describing here are the ones that they call negative or neurotic or delusional or non-virtuous. They even have a term, afflictions. All those words are referring to the same type of state of mind. So attachment is a delusion or an affliction or a neurosis. Anger is a delusion or an attachment or an affliction or a neurosis. Those terms all are referring to the unhappy states of mind. So delusion is one of the many words referring to the unhappy states of mind. That's all. And delusion is another word, is really good when that was I just said about Freud not being in touch with reality. This is really the point. When the Buddha is saying when we're really overwhelmed by attachment, we're so exaggerating the deliciousness of that new boyfriend and so obsessed with getting him and so emotionally hungry and so like possessive and manipulating and controlling. We're living in la la land. We can't see reality. When you're really depressed and the entire world looks like nothing and you feel like you are nothing, that's literally delusional, because it's a total exaggeration of your reality. You're not as bad as you think. When you're really angry and you want to kill that person, they look like a monster. So anger is a delusion. It exaggerates the ugliness of the person when we're in the midst of the anger. So in that sense, these neuroses are delusions. That's how they use that word. Do you understand me? And then you've got the positive states of mind, the virtues, the ones that cause us to be more happy: kindness, forgiveness, self-confidence, love, compassion. They are reasonable states of mind that are valid insofar as they're more spacious, they connect us to others, they're reasonable, they're positive, they're optimistic states of mind. And we have to try and cultivate those and grow those, because we're not set in stone, and cultivate and consciously lessen. And how we start to do that, the trouble is at the moment, they're just feelings. We only notice them when they get to the level of the body and you feel them in your body. Do you understand me? So this is why with a bit of concentration meditation every day, practicing, focusing on your breath, focusing on something, so you're stepping out of your head for 5 minutes, you can't help but hear all these conceptual thoughts that actually are the basis of those feelings. We don't even pay attention to what's in our head until it's shouting out our mouth. Or we can't get out of bed one day because we're so depressed. So our trouble is we wait in our culture, we wait till you feel things in your body before we even notice there's a problem. But that's a bit late. It's like when all the wheels are falling off. So with a daily meditation practice, one of the most practical benefits is that you're making this effort to stay stable. Watch your breath. Just focus on your breath. Bring your mind back to the breath. You wander off, bring your mind back to the breath. It's a training to stay focused. The benefit immediately is you can't help but hear all the crazy thoughts in the background, whereas you hadn't noticed them before. They often say when you start to meditate, you think your mind's getting worse. But you're now starting to see them. And the biggest problem is that we freak out. We can't bear to see them. We think we're terrible. But we have to have the courage to be able to hear our thoughts, not identify with them, but to know they're there, and they're the ones that cause us pain. And we slowly learn to distinguish between the neuroses and the good ones. Slowly, 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 slowly. That's the approach. Cognitive behavioral therapy talks like this. Neuroplasticity talks this way. You change your thoughts. It's intensely difficult, but there's just different approaches. Buddha's been saying this for a couple of thousand years. Are we communicating, Jenya? Sweetheart? Little bit, maybe, possibly. Something to think about, perhaps. Yeah. Keep reading, keep looking, keep checking, honey. There's many people talk different ways about it. This is my style. This is the way I say it. Comes down to the same things. Different people have different approaches, All right, sweetheart.
Yeah. I guess the confidence I've had, can
Go on.
wax and wane. And then when I feel confident, it's like, yes.
Yeah, that's it. That's right.
And then I lose confidence and it's like,
That's right. That's it. That's when we become fragile and shaky and the world looks like a disaster and we can't do it and we're hopeless. It's exactly, we go up and down like bloody yo-yos, girl. I know that's part of the thing. So keep going. And I mean, this is why I find very encouraging in the Buddhist literature. There's amazing, when you read some of the talk, literally the way the mind is this incredible thing. We're not talking about the brain. We're talking about the subjective cognitive process itself. We've got tremendous potential. The mind isn't set in stone. And having that, for me, that gives me confidence, no matter how bad things are. And the hardest thing is when things are going bad. The worst part of it is we believe this is the total reality. we can't believe anything positive, but this is just everyday practice, everyday practice, everyday just practice. Plod along, one step at a time. Okay, sweetheart? There's a million different techniques and approaches and all kinds of practices. That's up to us to find the style that works for us and the methods that work for us. Do you understand, darling? You see, this way in the Tibetan tradition, we get a bit confused because we hear about all this thing called preliminary practices. We hear about prostrations and water bowls and mantras and think, what the hell is all this? What's this got to do with the price of fish, we think, Do you understand? The way I like to think about that is if you go to Roger Federer, you get all excited and say, please show me how to play tennis. And he looks at you, you're 20 pounds overweight, no muscle tone. You don't know anything about a tennis racket. You know nothing about anything. You're completely a disaster physically, not to mention mentally. So he says, well, I want you to go for a year or so, Rabina, and lose 20 pounds and go on a diet and get into nutrition and learn all about nutrition and go to school and learn tennis philosophy and learn this and learn that. And you'll say, no, and then do push-ups. And you say, no, Roger, you didn't hear me. Can you show me how to play tennis? And he'll repeat his answers. He's giving you the preliminary practices because your body isn't ready yet. So all these Buddhists are saying is that this stuff that we're talking about is actually really sophisticated practice. To really succeed in the way we're talking is really sophisticated practice, which implies the depth of the habit of the neuroses, even in ordinary people. So we've got to do lots of preliminary practice. So that means you've got to have a whole confidence in this system, which is a Tibetan Buddhist one. Zens don't talk this way, See, that's up to you to find the system that works for you. But another whole approach, this is for Virginia too. This is something that is always surprising to us. As we know from the Buddhist, the kind of the order of practices is kind of structured nicely. And the very first level of practice, Buddha doesn't talk about controlling your mind. He doesn't talk about meditating. He says, kindly control your behavior first. Please be a nice person and don't punch and kick and shout and kill and shove four pieces of cake down your mouth. Sort of. He's saying control the servants of your mind first. So this is really interesting because in our culture, we don't talk about spiritual practice to do with keeping your mouth shut. That sounds ridiculous. It's so boring. Oh, I want to meditate. Well, if you can't control your mouth, if you can't control vomiting out every thought you have, if you can't stop being angry and neurotic and just blurring on, boring people to tears with your mouth, how in the name of heaven and hell, God in heaven, can you possibly see your mind? You can't. And this is our problem. We don't even know what is happening in our mind until it comes out of the mouth. I mean, a person like me got angry easily. Other people might not. But the other extreme we have is either vomit it all out or suppress and deny. Both are a disaster. So the Buddha's suggesting, okay, for people who don't vomit out their mouth, this practice is not for you because you already don't vomit out your mouth, but you've got to stop suppressing. You've got to start noticing your thoughts, But for a person who's got uncontrolled speech, and most of us have, mightn't be angry speech, but it's out of control speech, it's vomiting about rubbish speech, speech that's lying, speech that's speculating, speech that's behind backs. Our favourite activity is criticising people behind their backs. We spend our lives criticising politicians, thinking we're being noble. We're vomiting negative thoughts all day. Apart from anything else, the real thing is this, apart from anything else, the real point is, what do you think you're doing to yourself? We don't get that in our culture. I'm allowed to say what I like, and we don't think speech matters, and we don't think our mind matters. I mean, it's so demented to think that way. I mean, if you're sitting in your house and no one is there, and you're screaming and yelling at the television and cursing and swearing and shouting and going on about your ex-boyfriend and your husband, who is suffering? Who have you harmed?
Yeah.
We are so disconnected from ourselves, we don't even realize we're harming ourselves. I think, forget about karma, If we could just see that this first stage of practice, the beneficiary is oneself. Control your body, Okay, his first step, Buddha says, don't do really heavy duty actions like kill and steal and lie, because they're going to harm you terribly in the future, not to mention now. At least refrain from those. But by implication, you can get from that not to put 6 pieces of cake in your mouth, not to jump on 7 boys a day, you know. Not only moralistic reason, because you're following attachment continually and you'll never get happy. It's just a bottomless pit. It's not moralistic, it's practical. We can't hear this, you know. So we can just see that what we do with our body, speech, and mind, we are the first person who gets the harm. This should give us enough compassion for ourselves to want to try to change our body, speech, and mind. But we hear that in the West, we just get guilty. Oh, what do you mean? That doesn't sound right. I should do it out of compassion. Yeah, for yourself first, please. The whole first level of practice, control your body, speech, and mind, is you are the beneficiary. We really don't get that in the West. We just get guilty, you know. If we realize, and of course the karmic view, Buddha's view, is we literally create ourselves, you know. We come into this life program with our own tendencies. We are our own creator. When we know that, some self-respect can come, you know. So control the body and the speech. Control the servants of your mind. If we in our relationships could control our speech, 90% of our problems wouldn't even occur. You look at families, look at Buddhist centers. You know, holy Buddhists, one of the biggest mistakes is we talk about each other behind our backs. It's one of the worst, most painful sufferings we can do. To ourselves, not to mention the disharmony it causes others, you know, it's unbearable. But why it's so strong in the West, this idea to share, we call it sharing, you know, it's so disgusting. It's because we are not good at knowing what we think. That's why we have to have therapists. We don't know how to deal with our own mind. We're not taught. So we have to find a person to whom we can speak, and there's nothing wrong. The only person a therapist is there is to help you hear yourself. They don't care about your life. It's not their job. They're just your sounding board. So if you need that, use it. If we can do our own work and be our own therapist, great. So we control the body and speech, behave well, harnessing your own energy, then you have the ability. This is a preliminary practice, think about it. You're harnessing your physical and verbal energy. Now you have the opportunity to hear your mind. So logical. Very first step. It really is, controlling your body and speech is like a preliminary practice before you start to meditate, I promise. It's a good way to put it. But it really is long-term, Genya. Don't think it's not long-term, Genya, I promise. So when we know, I mean, if you have a long-term view, then you're prepared to, you're moving forward. But if you think it should be sooner, if you think your oak tree should come sooner, you'll be very disappointed. But if you know it'll take 30 years, you pace yourself, don't you? But the junkie-inness, the attachment, goes from thinking that cake will make you happy to, oh, now I'll meditate, that'll make me happy. So all these fantasy expectations. We just destroy ourselves, you know. The biggest one too is we're afraid of what's in our mind. It terrifies us. We are really terrified of what's in our mind. We can't bear to see the neuroses, you know. It's too painful. So you have to have courage. But when we know they're not our true nature, then we'll have the courage to see them. It's okay, because we can change them. As Lama Zopa says, we can mold our mind into any shape we like.
Jenya has another question.
Okay, good, Genya. Go, darling. Talk to me, sweetheart.
What does servants mean? Servants of the mind.
Servants. It's a term I use. Well, think of your body, think of your speech. Would you agree that speech is an expression of thoughts? Would you agree with that? Thoughts are in your mind, and then you speak them out, don't you? And that's words. Would you agree? Well, that the speech is the servant of your mind. So if your mind is angry, your speech does the job of speaking angry words. You understand me? And in your body, if you're angry, the fist will punch. So the body is a servant of the anger. The speech is the servant of the attachment. So that's the way of saying it. Our body and speech, we give them tremendous power in our culture, thinking it's all just me. But we can divide me into the body, the speech, and the mind. The mind is the key one. What's going on in our mind is the key one. And then we express them through body and speech. So in that sense, they're the servants of the mind. Do you understand me? Does that make sense? We don't think of it like this in our culture. We just think me, big lump of me, you know. But and then in Buddhist terms, there's very clear levels of practice. You control your body and speech first. You harness your verbal and physical energy and stop. And that benefits you because you're not out of control. Now you have the luxury of the opportunity to see your mind more clearly and learn to meditate. Do you understand, sweetheart? Make sense?
So
Not
you
sure.
can, so which part do you control?
What, darling? Say it
Which part do you control?
again. Well, I think speech is a good
All
one.
of them?
No, yeah, but I mean, if you go around shooting and killing people, you better start controlling that. You don't. Like most of us, you probably shoot your mouth off and get mad at people or get angry or say something nasty or, you know. Do you understand my point? You probably do that if you're like a normal person. You don't look like you get angry too often, which is a good quality. What do you think? But can you hear what I'm saying? If we get, it's like they have a nice saying: when you're with others, watch your behavior, control your speech, and control your body. When you're on your own, now you can afford to watch your mind. So behave nicely in the presence of others. It's both for your own sake and theirs, because we can't bear disharmony. We can't stand fighting. We can't bear it when everything's all wrong with other people. So at least we have some sense of responsibility to attempt to be nice in others' presence, not just to be seen as a nice girl, but it's out of kindness to others. But also, really, we are the beneficiary of it. If we can harness our energy and don't say that bad word, we feel a lot better about it. It's a very conscious practice. It's not just meant to be suppressing. It's not meant to be just to try and be a good girl. Because the Buddha's idea about karma is that every single tiny thing we think and do and say is the process of producing ourself. Everything counts. You with me? You think? Maybe? Yeah? Well, slowly, darling, think about it.
I have a question.
Yeah, go. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Venerable Rabina.
Good.
Before I speak in anger or act out in anger, and I see anger comes into my mind,
Yes.
what is the antidote for that?
I know, that's the one. It's practicing not saying it. That's the point, practicing not saying it.
Okay, I have an angry thought.
Mhm.
Before I say anything or before I punch somebody,
Yeah.
I see the angry thought in my mind.
If you're so good and can do that.
My question is, what is the antidote?
Antidote to which bit? The speaking of the
No.
words or the anger itself?
The anger coming into my mind.
So the antidote to that. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Already you've succeeded in seeing the angry thought. So if you've practiced noticing your mind, then that means you've begun to practice controlling your speech, which is already tremendously good. So the antidote, when we see the anger, and this is the problem, anger, if it builds up and you only catch it when it's really strong, then there's not much to do, except by that point it probably is out the mouth, or you're going to burst. So the thing is, this is where with practice, that's why having a simple daily practice, focusing your mind, stepping out of your head, attempting to, you're going to hear all the thoughts and hear all the thoughts as if you're getting worse. And then you bring that skill to bear. And when you get off your cushion or off your chair and you go to the kitchen and there's your wife or your daughter slurping their coffee, a minor, tiny action. Whereas once you would have just blurted out the words, you understand, because you didn't even notice the angry thought. But now because you're becoming familiar with seeing your mind, you're going to, as you're going to the kitchen, you're catching your thoughts. They're not that violent yet. And you say, okay, honey child, how about calming down? It's only slurping the coffee. She's a human being. It's all right. And you talk yourself through it. But if it's very violent, if it's too strong, it's too late to talk yourself through it. That's why we've got to start to watch our mind and grab it before it gets to the mouth, before it gets strong. That's the skill that Buddha's giving us with these types of practices. You see my point?
Yes.
And then you catch it. And then it's at a level of a thought before it's being too emotional, then you can talk, you hear it. She's slurping her coffee again. I told you I can't stand the sound. Blah, blah, blah. You're hearing it, and you argue with your virtuous thoughts. You argue with it. There's space in your mind to argue with it. That's what the real practice is. This is tremendously powerful practice. Do you understand me? But so it's a gradual process, you know, gradual process. But the key point is, I think in our modern culture, because we're not brought up with techniques of observing our mind, we really wait until it's out the mouth before we realize we've got a problem. And that for me is really the analogy for me is like you're driving at 100 miles an hour on the freeway and your wheels are falling off, but because you've never paid attention to your wheels wobbling. You've never heard of a mechanic. I always joke, but it's true. We have incredible maintenance for bodies, cars, houses, furniture, but not our mind. We wait till it's too late before we go to the mechanic, to the therapist. Do you understand my point? So if we can start the practice of seeing our mind before it gets emotional, that's the key to success. That's the key to success. Then you can work with it and be your own therapist and argue with yourself. That's really what daily practice is. Honestly, it's nothing cosmic. But when it's really violent and so overwhelming you can't think of anything else, the best you can do is at least don't kill the person, at least don't vomit, and work with and try and find a way we can work with it and help yourself calm down, you know. But if we can grab it beforehand, that's the real skill. That's the real sign of success.
Thank
Do you
you.
understand?
Yes.
Yeah. So the steady, this is exactly the point, steady, you see. If you've done your practice, you've 5 minutes of just watching your breath, you've stayed stable, you can't overhear your thoughts, which is good, although we think it's not, but it is good because you can hear them. You know the dangers, you know the things that make you crazy. And so you're hearing the thoughts before they get to the level of emotion, feeling. And then you can talk to yourself, argue with them, you know, because you start to hear what anger's saying, how dare she do that? It's terrible. I hate her. She's this, she's that. Jealousy is another set of thoughts. Arrogance is another lot of thoughts. You know, low self-esteem is another lot of thoughts. There's all these thoughts going on, and we have to notice them before they become emotional. And then we can argue, talk them through like crazy children. Bring your good roommates out, you know, and the good roommates can argue with the crazy roommates. It's like that. It's like that, honestly. It's not mystical. It's very practical. Then we can stay steady in the face of problems. Of course, it's not difficult. Of course, it's not easy, but we can do it. It's possible. It's possible. It's possible. Do you understand? Yeah. People have confidence. But of course, if things are that bad, you've got to keep away. I mean, this is at least have some self-respect and know you can't handle that drunk uncle at the family party at Thanksgiving. You really can't cope, then you don't go. Got to have that courage, but that's difficult because we're scared of upsetting people, you know. So it's catch-22.
What if you're the drunk uncle?
Okay. Well, then I don't know, honey child. Then you just have to. You got to keep away from everybody else. You're going to say, "Oh, I'm not coming to Thanksgiving. I'll get too drunk. I'll leave you in peace." That would be so kind of you. Okay, people. That's it for this year.
For Women of Wisdom, celebrating the living legacy of Buddhist women, Seichen Ling is proud to have partnered with key organizations whose work aligns with the aims of the series. The mission of the Treasury of Lives, and you can see on the slide there, is to provide access to Tibetan history and religion through the life stories of all people from the region. However, with such a shockingly low number of biographies being of women, the Treasury launched their Women Initiative, a dedicated effort to better balance the site with the goal of publishing 100 biographies of women over 3 years. For our Women of Wisdom series, we are highlighting one of the bios from the Women Initiative at the end of each presentation in the program. We heartily encourage all those attending events in the series to explore the work of Treasury of Lives. And then let me just tell you a little bit about this woman.
So, I mean, she must have, hang on a minute, she can't have been Tibetan because they never had, she's Gelongma, and Gelongma is fully ordained, and they never had full ordination in Tibet. So she has to have been Indian, 10th century. Is she Indian?
I think she's Indian.
It says that she's born into royalty as Princess Lakshmi, so she's Indian, yeah.
Gelongma Pelmo, born in the 10th century and died in the 11th century, is held in the Himalayan and Tibetan Buddhist communities to be the legendary founder of the Nungne sorry, Nune.
The
Help me here.
Nune, fasting
Fasting
meditation.
meditation. She is credited with the authorship of several praises and liturgical manuals dedicated to Avalokiteshvara, Mahakarunika,
Mhm.
and Tara. Born into royalty as Princess Lakshmi, she renounced her kingdom, ordained as a nun to pursue the study and practice of Dharma under the guidance of a guru. And now we're going to go to our dedication prayers, and I hope everybody will help me with that.
So we just think we're going to hear. Can we say it in my words? Just
Yeah.
say it naturally, kind of instead of just sound. What we're saying is, it says here, look, given that every tiny thought we have doesn't go astray. This is very encouraging, and everything we think and do and say stays in the mind, programs us. So we think how amazing. There's 90 minutes, as many thoughts, positive thoughts we've had, all these virtuous actions. May I, as a result of these sowing seeds in my mind, may I quickly attain the state of a Buddha, as we motivated, and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. Just to be motivated. That's amazing, you know, dedication they call it. This one is amazing prayer. Let's just sing in Tibetan again. Come on. Changchob semchog rinpoche makye panam kegyuchi kyepa nyampa mepa nyam gongne yonzu pava sho. The supreme jewel, Vichita, this amazing aspiration to be a benefit to others, that has not arisen in the minds of others, may it arise and grow.
Yeah.
And if it hasn't arisen, but if it has arisen, may it never diminish, but increase more and more. Amazing. Yeah, I mean,
Mother
this is
of the victorious ones of the three kinds and 10 directions, pilot the great bliss and graced by great compassion, my perfect Aryatara, who is an ordinary form, guide for us pitiful transmigrating beings left guideless. How kind you are! May all your wishes be instantly fulfilled, and may your life be stable until samsara ends.
okay, good.
Next slide.
Oh,
Almighty One, you destroy all enemy of delusions, who reveal the Dharma of scripture and realization, spreading it in the mental continuum of transmigrating beings. Thereby eliminating to observations, including their entrance, how kind you are. May all your wishes be instantly fulfilled, and may your life be stable until samsara ends. By the blessings of the Guru, the deity and the power protectors, and unbetrayed actions and their results, as well as the truth of ultimate reality, in all my lifetimes may I only please and never displease for even 1 second the Guru, and may all the vital points of my prayers be fulfilled. And now we're going to go.
Now, this is prayer that Lama Zopa wrote, especially for His Holiness.
Yeah.
It's not just the land just knows, you see, it's for us as well. That's why he did change the words. The wish granting, wish fulfilling jewel, source of every civic benefit and happiness in this world. The help of the client to together and receive. May all of your wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Next one.
Now His Holiness, the Dalai Lama's prayer for the swift return of Lama
Yeah.
Zopa
So we heard the
Rinpoche.
first phase of the news, and His Holiness has recognized that he's around. He's a Nepali child. It seems like he's a boy in Nepal. That's all we know so far. So we keep having this prayer that we actually get to, as the last line says, you know, may the smile of the reincarnation. Okay. Here the teacher and assembly of children, victorious ones, touching the Buddhas, victorious relatives, father and sons, together with the masters, the objects of refuge of the infinite lands. Please bestow the virtue of goodness and accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding, spreading, moving these precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You walk the path of patience that is never discouraged. In comfort, venerable Guru, to you I make requests, while striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the soul gateway through which all benefit and happiness flow, and from other living beings, and we suddenly depart into peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean, of the three jewels and the great waves of the future, that the children of the victorious ones may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples.
And Nicole and Cindy, can you come and help me, please? And we're going to continue.
Good, darling. We're going to offer a mandala now. As we said before, all the marvelous things of the world. And then in order to thank you for the teachings. So Saji Perki Jogsing Me Tofan Virabling Ji Degen Pali Sange Jingu Mikhe Wagi, Droga Nanda Jingla Chirpa. We was offer a mandala, which is the universe. Now we're going to offer representations of enlightened body, speech, and mind. Maybe all achieve these ourselves. That's the whole point. For us to achieve enlightened body, speech, and mind. How amazing. Thank you, everybody. Idam Guru Ranama Jalakam Nirya Kayami. Thank you so much, Effie. Thank you, Donna. So kind. Thank you for having us, for having me. Thank you. And I rejoice in all the things you're all doing. It's so good. Keep going, never give up. And that's it. Bob's your uncle.
That's not American.
That's not American. I don't know. Is that English? Your uncle is American. I'm sure it is.
It's British in Australia.
I'm sure it's no.
And
All
if
right,
you wanna,
check
do you
it out.
mind speak for a moment to,
Your
people in the
uncle.
Gompa?
I'm looking up Bob's your
However you
uncle.
go.
Oh, British English, yeah, British. Roughly equivalent,
Gompa, but we'd also.
roughly, so it's roughly equivalent to, and there you have it. Or it's as simple as that.